Hello, welcome to Herp Corner, where we'll be discussing the earless monitor lizard, also known as the Borneo earless monitor or Lanthanotus borneensis. Their genus, Lanthanotus, means hidden ear in Greek. Their specific epithet, borneensis, references the area they're most commonly found in, Borneo. They've received their common namesake from their lack of tympanum, or a visible ear hole. But don't worry, they can still very much hear. This species has rows of keeled scales on their back with a bit of a skink-like body. There's a general dark brown or black coloration along their bodies, sometimes with a brown belly that gradients into black, or just entirely black or entirely brown. They've got stubby little arms and a dopey round nose, tiny black eyes with blue skin surrounding them. Best description of their looks could be summed up as, I want to pet him. They overall look very different from most monitor lizards, both in their physical appearance and in their size. They usually get up to around 16 inches or 40 centimeters head to tail. Compare that to the 7-foot Nile monitor. Funnily enough, they're not even the smallest species of monitor lizard. That would be the Dampier Peninsula monitor, who's 9 inches or 23 centimeters. But we're not talking about that guy today. Earless monitor lizards are, for the most part, nocturnal, but have been observed to still sometimes be active during the day. Like most lizards, they have the ability to drop their tails. Unlike most lizards, however, they can't grow it back. In captivity, they've been seen to occasionally utter quiet squeaking noises, but unfortunately, there hasn't been any instances of this caught on video. The earless monitor lizard was discovered in 1878 by Franz Steindachner. They were found in Borneo, eastern Malaysia, and in some small parts of Indonesia. There weren't actually any preserved animals of this species in captivity until around the late 1900s, where there were 2 or 3, all of which were wet specimens in a French museum. To this day, we've only ever documented about 100 of them. They're one of the few animals we've covered that the IUCN Red List has not judged, but it's easy to tell that they're probably threatened or endangered. I say this because all their threats are semi-well documented. Such threats include the fact that when flooding occurs, earless monitor lizards will often be swept into fishing traps, though it's speculated that they've adapted to wrapping their prehensile tail around stones in the water to prevent this from occurring. Another threat is the fact that a majority of their original habitats are now victims of deforestation and palm oil farming. They've been driven out of their original land so many times that it's a little tricky to know where they are or were actually native. Additionally, there are quite a lot of importers and wildlife traders that catch these guys in the wild. No doubt they're so popular with importers because of their very unique look, but unfortunately this does hurt their wild populations quite a lot, as you might expect. Thankfully, there have been attempts to combat this. Even though not a single zoo has been able to breed them, a few captive breeders have. For instance, Zilla, a reptile product brand, has headquarters in Wisconsin that are actively attempting to breed the earless monitor lizards. They're given large bioactive enclosures and fed varied diets. The conditions they live in there are pretty good. I commend Zilla's attempts and in response say, "Please, Zilla, sponsor me." Anyway, the natural environment of this species consists mostly of tropical areas, forests and such, with a decent amount of water. They're semi-aquatic, so they spend a decent amount of time in rivers and streams. Usually the water and air are around 70 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit or 20 or 30 degrees Celsius, with an average humidity of 80%. The rivers are often rocky and surrounded with damp soil. The ground is usually covered with leaf litter. I'd suggest implementing all of these aspects to the enclosure, which, speaking of, care for the earless monitor lizard is pretty similar to most monitors, for advanced keepers primarily. I'd say they just need to be scaled down a little since they don't get as big as, say, a Nile monitor. The complexities arise when you take into consideration their intelligence, something very common with monitors. Because of this, it's good to keep in mind for an enclosure to be as enriching as possible for them, in a way that's safe, of course. We'll get to that in a little though. First we need to lay down the basics. As stated before, this species requires quite a bit of humidity. Not only that, but they're pretty fossorial. Most of the time, if they're not sitting under the water of your aquatic area, which, yes, that's a mandatory part of the enclosure, they're going to be under the soil. So, I expect that you know what you must do. Bioactivity is key. I'd personally recommend having a cleanup crew of large millipedes and isopods since those double as a snack for your monitor, but that's just me. The typical choice of springtails is still a good one. Of course, the other marks of a bioactive enclosure should still be present. Soil, drainage, live plants, all that. The basking spot should be around 95 degrees Fahrenheit or 35 degrees Celsius. Something along those lines. The cool side of the enclosure should be around 75 or 80 degrees Fahrenheit, or roughly 25 degrees Celsius. For this enclosure, I added quite a lot that I'd like to briefly break down, so bear with me. For the basking spot, you can see it's elevated by some thick wood sticks with a rock slab on top. I know marble and soapstone retain heat really well, so there's some food for thought. For ease of use for the monitor, there's a little rope ladder leading to the top of the ledge. The fact that the ledge is right in front of the plant is intentional, since that makes it an optimal warm hide as well. Right next to it is a small log hide, which has a unique texture for the monitor to fiddle with, as well as being lower to the ground, which makes it a little bit of a challenge to get into without burrowing. Behind it are more ferns and things that can provide shade in the hot area. There's also about 7 inches of dirt and leaf litter, which I feel is the optimal amount for both the monitor and the plants he lives with. Though it doesn't have to be dirt, that's replaceable with peat moss, cypress mulch, and other things. In front of the land area is a long pane of glass separating it from the water and sand. The sand itself is pretty standard aquarium sand, wouldn't recommend anything dyed, and definitely not rocks. On the sand is a big group of rocks and stones. They only look sharp. They shouldn't actually be dangerous to the animal. They're meant to resemble the rocks from Borneo's rivers. Beside the rocks is a PVC pipe, functionally an underwater hide. Serves as some extra enrichment for the animal. In the water with the animal are some small tetras, and they could be ghost shrimp. Yeah, the tetras are there in case he wants to go fishing. The ghost shrimp are the filtration system. A few people have made videos with paludariums where they can make this work. I'd suggest consulting them if you're really serious about it. I personally don't have much experience with aquatic tank stuff in general, so I'm not the one to use as your main source of info, but I know that ghost shrimp and Bloody Mary shrimp are both fairly good filters for paludariums. Also important to note that I didn't include this in the original enclosure, but pothos are really good plants to have, since they suck up a lot of nutrients with their roots. Nutrients include stuff like the monitor's feces or food remains in the water, you know. If you want to go the full filtration route, I'd recommend the Terrarium channel's video on earless monitors, since the guy goes pretty in-depth with his husbandry. Link in description. Though, aside from the animals provided, I also put some duckweed at the surface of the water, since it works as nourishment for the animal from time to time. Just a nice little snack. But that's if they eat duckweed at all. Right above the water section is a little rope hammock similar to the Night Angel Bearded Dragon Hammock Reptile Lounger. Yep. The water makes the temperatures in that area nice and cool, so the lounger gives some land if the monitor wants it. But that's a nice little breakdown of all that's going on in this enclosure. Honestly, I'd probably recommend something a little bigger for them. Monitor keepers typically go above and beyond with their enclosures, so take some notes from them. I am not familiar with the niche as much, so I'd recommend doing research on, Ackie monitor setups to get a good idea of sizes for the enclosure. I'd probably say what I put here is just the minimum for this species. I can't fit any bigger on this table, unfortunately. Feeding for this species is a little more complex than most other guys we've covered. They definitely need a varied diet and should be fed around once every 2 days, though sometimes they'll go off food irregularly, usually no more than a week or two. They enthusiastically take feeder fish, such as Poeciliidae, so one of those, and redworms. Other food for them includes bits of larger fish like trout and pinkies. If you do feed them worms, make sure that you feed around 3 to 5 worms for every mealtime they're chosen. No matter what you feed them, I'd recommend dusting the food with Repticalcium with D3 just for some extra nutrients, unless it's a live animal. That might be a little weird. As far as handling goes, this is about as good as it gets for monitors. They're pretty mild-mannered, not inclined to bite, and have claws no duller than an Ackie. With breeding, the very little done with this species has been documented quite nicely, especially thanks to Rob Nixon, who has a nice little presentation on his experience with this species. There's so much information there that I feel like all I would be doing would be relaying what he says to you. That or butchering it wildly. So instead, I'd rather redirect you to his speech, link in the description. But I think that's going to be all for this installment of Herp Corner. As always, sources will be in the description. If you're interested in this topic, I'd recommend looking further into their husbandry or history. If you learned something new with this one, feel free to subscribe. I do these every other week. Like the video to support the channel. Have a good evening, morning, or afternoon. Thank you for listening, watching, whatever, and I'll see you next time.